attitude with you." The entire restaurant went silent. Silverware paused midair. Glasses clinked in disbelief. Nobody expected those words, especially not from a black waitress wearing a coffee-stained apron, standing tall in front of a billionaire heir with a smug grin and a $20,000 watch. But for Amara Johnson, this wasn't about money. It was about dignity. 12 hours earlier, the morning had started like any other. The coastal sun hadn't yet cut through the fog as Amara yawned, tied her apron, and stepped into the back kitchen of Harbor Light, the ritzy seaside restaurant perched over California cliffs. "Another double shift?" asked Tasha, the pastry chef, her white cap slightly askew. "Rent doesn't care if you're tired," Amara replied with a half-smile, tying her braids into a bun. "And neither does tuition." Her younger brother, Jordan, had just started his first semester at UCLA, and every dollar counted. Amara had shelved her dream of attending culinary school so Jordan could follow his. No regrets, at least not most days. The restaurant buzzed with early prep. Chefs sharpened knives. Hosts reviewed reservation lists. The air smelled like lemon zest and ambition. Amara slid into her rhythm, refilling coffee, flipping menus, memorizing orders by heart. She was fast, efficient, and polite. But most importantly, she was invisible to the kind of people who dined there. Until today, around noon, the restaurant manager, Kyle, approached her with a clipboard and a furrowed brow. "Hey, Amara. VIP coming in for late lunch. Big deal. You've got Section 5 today, right?" "Yeah, why?" "Don't screw this one up. He's temperamental. And wealthy. Really wealthy. Like private jet level." Amara wiped her hands on her apron. "Got it. Do you want polite or plastic?" "Plastic. Until he tips. Then polite." She rolled her eyes as Kyle walked away. Section 5 overlooked the ocean, a favorite for celebrities, CEOs, and real estate moguls. Amara straightened her name tag and rechecked every glass, fork, and napkin. She'd served difficult customers before. What was one more ego? At exactly 2:08 p.m., he arrived. Sunglasses indoors, gold cufflinks, designer loafers too clean to have touched pavement. He was the kind of man who didn't wait to be noticed, he expected it. "Table for one," he said to the host without even looking up from his phone. "Name's Royce." Amara's chest tightened. Royce. As in Harrison Royce, the billionaire real estate tycoon. Apparently, this was Landon Royce, the son. Known for fast cars, faster scandals, and treating staff like they were beneath his shoe. Amara approached with calm professionalism. "Welcome to Harbor Light. Can I get you started with something to drink, Mr. Royce?" He slowly looked up. His eyes scanned her from top to bottom, lingering too long. His smile was smug. "Huh. I thought this place had a dress code. Guess aprons are in season." She didn't flinch. "Still water or sparkling?" He smirked. "Sparkling. But only if you bring it." She turned without a word and returned moments later with his water and a menu. Before she could hand it over, he flicked a $100 bill onto the table. "That's for a smile. Think you can manage one, sweetheart." A few diners turned their heads. Amara held the menu tightly, breathing through her nose. She forced a polite tone. "Your money doesn't buy my face. Are you ready to order, or should I come back when you're done being inappropriate?" That got his attention. "Oh, I like the attitude," he said, leaning back. "Feisty. Bet that gets you extra tips in the city." Another waitress passed by, eyes wide-mouthing. "Just ignore him." Amara's hands trembled, but not with fear. With fire. She'd worked through 16-hour shifts, rude CEOs, sexist comments, and arrogant tourists. But this was different. This man wasn't just rude. He was entitled, dangerous, and enjoying it. He picked up the menu, scanned it briefly, and said, "You know what? Surprise me. Bring me what you think I deserve." Amara set the menu down. "I think you deserve something cold, stale, and flavorless. But since that's not on the menu, I'll save you the trouble." She stepped back, took a breath, and said it loud enough for 3 nearby tables to hear. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the table and take your attitude with you." The silence was deafening. Landon blinked. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Amara said, standing firm. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who disrespects our staff. That includes you." Kyle rushed over, red-faced. Amara! What are you? This is. He's harassing staff, Amara snapped. I'm not serving him. Landon stood slowly, clearly not used to being challenged. Do you even know who I am? No, Amara said, folding her arms. And I still don't care. Gasps echoed across the room. Landon laughed bitterly, grabbing his sunglasses. This isn't over. He stormed out, pulling out his phone. The glass doors swung shut behind him. Kyle looked like he might pass out. Amara, you just kicked out Landon Royce. His father owns half the real estate in the state. Amara looked down at the bill on the table and calmly folded it in half, handing it to Kyle. Add it to your tips. I don't need his money. She walked back to the kitchen, heart pounding, hands shaking, but with a strange sense of peace. Dignity doesn't pay the bills. But today, it paid something better. The echo of Landon Royce's designer shoes had barely faded from the marble floors when the restaurant buzzed back to life, but not in the usual clinking glasses, chatter and laughter kind of way. This was different. It was hushed voices, wide eyes, and the electric tension that only comes when someone ordinary does something extraordinary or suicidal. Amara stepped into the break room, jaw tight. Her hands moved automatically, reaching for a water bottle, wiping invisible smudges off her apron, but her mind was racing. Are you insane? Whispered Elena, another server, as she followed her in. That man could shut us down with a phone call. Amara didn't answer. Not because she didn't hear her, but because she couldn't trust her voice not to crack. He was being disgusting, she finally said, her tone calm but firm. If we let people like him slide, just because they're rich, what does that make us? Elena sighed, eyes darting to the door. You're brave. I just hope it doesn't cost you your job. That's when Kyle burst in. Amara. Office. Now. Inside the manager's office, the air was staler than day-old coffee. Kyle stood stiffly behind his desk, his clipboard forgotten, eyes stormy. Do you realize what you've done? Amara sat across from him, folding her hands. I refused service to a customer who was sexually harassing me. That's not insubordination. That's self-respect. Self-respect won't pay the bills when this place closes, he snapped. That wasn't just any customer. That was Landon Royce, heir to the Royce empire, the man who practically owns the marina we sit on. She blinked but said nothing. He could sue. He could call the board. He could destroy us. And you think it's noble to just throw that kind of power away over some rude comments? No, she replied softly. I think it's necessary. Kyle leaned back, rubbing his temples. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner. Look, he said finally. I don't want to fire you. You're one of the best waitresses we've ever had. But my hands may be tied. I've already gotten 2 calls about what happened, one from our corporate PR and one from a Royce Holdings assistant. Amara's stomach dropped. That fast? Everything's fast when billionaires are involved. By the time she walked out of the office, the story had already hit Twitter. A guest had recorded the whole thing. Amara's calm defiance, Landon's sarcastic grin, the final moment she asked him to leave. The clip had already been retweeted over 2,000 times. Some praised her. Queen behavior. Normalized kicking out entitled men. That's how you stand your ground. Others were less kind. Enjoy being unemployed. She didn't know her place. Cloud-chasing waitress wants to be famous. Amara didn't reply to any of it. She turned her phone off. She worked the rest of her shift in silence. Every customer felt like a judge. Every coworker seemed torn between admiration and fear. By closing time, exhaustion clung to her bones. She slipped her apron off and grabbed her bag, planning to disappear before anyone else cornered her with opinions. But as she stepped into the cool night air behind the restaurant, her phone buzzed. 5 missed calls from her landlord. Confused, she answered on the 6th. Miss Johnson, said the voice on the other end, cold and clipped. I received a complaint from another tenant. They said you were involved in something problematic. Online. I don't want drama in my building. What are you talking about? She asked, stunned. Just keep your name out of the news, or I'll have to reconsider renewing your lease. We run a respectable complex. The line went dead. Amara stood frozen under the dim alley light, the sound of ocean waves crashing behind her. Now even home wasn't safe. She took the bus back to her tiny apartment in South LA, trying to ignore the whispers in her head. Why did you do it? You could have just smiled. Just walked away. But deep down she knew why. Because every time she stayed silent, someone like Landon Royce got louder. Because her little brother needed a world where women like her could stand tall and still stand employed. Because if she didn't say something, who would? At home, she reheated old rice and eggs and scrolled through her phone despite herself. Her name was trending locally. One blog had already dubbed her the waitress who took on the Royces. She turned the screen off again. When she finally fell asleep on her couch, it wasn't rest. It was the kind of heavy, haunted sleep that comes when you know you've done something right, but fear it may cost you everything. The next morning, she was back at Harbor Light. No one had fired her. Not yet. Cal didn't speak to her. Coworkers avoided her eyes. Customers whispered behind menus. She powered through the breakfast shift with robotic precision. At 1:30 p.m., she went out back to toss the trash. And then the sound came. Not traffic. Not seagulls. A low, thunderous hum in the sky. She squinted upward. Out past the trees, a sleek black helicopter was descending slowly toward the private pad near the bluff. The blade sliced through the air like a storm. Everyone inside rushed to the windows. Amara stood frozen. It wasn't the kind of helicopter that brought tourists. This one was different. Sleek, matte black, whisper quiet despite its power. The kind of aircraft that didn't ask for permission to land. It simply landed. Inside Harbor Light, guests were already on their feet, phones pointed toward the glass windows. Some were filming. Some were whispering. A few just stared. But Amara didn't move. She stood near the back entrance, one hand gripping the trash bin lid, the other clenched by her side. She knew. She didn't know how, but she knew exactly who was inside that helicopter. Moments later, the side door of the chopper opened, and a man in a tailored gray suit stepped out, flanked by two assistants in crisp black. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, his posture commanding. He walked like someone who never needed to explain himself. Harrison Royce, the man who built an empire from luxury resorts and skyscrapers. The man whose last public appearance involved shaking hands with 2 U.S. senators and a Saudi prince. And now, he was walking up the stone path of a restaurant to speak to a waitress. Amara couldn't breathe. Inside, Cal nearly tripped over a chair running to the front. "Mr. Royce," he called out, forcing a smile so wide it nearly cracked. "Welcome, sir. This is, well, an honor, obviously." "Manager?" Harrison asked, voice cool, calm. Yes. Cal Morrison, at your service. I want to speak to your staff. In particular, the waitress from yesterday." "Now." Kyle's face drained of color. "Amara. She's still employed?" Yes, technically. I mean, we were waiting for legal to weigh in, but..." Harrison lifted one hand. Kyle fell silent. "Bring her to me. Not in the back. Here." He pointed to an empty table by the window. "I want the whole place to see." From the kitchen hallway, Amara could already hear murmurs. "She's not going out there, is she?" "Girl, this is not the time to be stubborn." He probably brought papers. Lawsuit incoming. But she was already walking. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, but her spine stayed straight. She passed gawking customers, whispering servers, and stunned chefs. The moment she reached the table, Harrison stood and offered his hand. "Miss Johnson." She blinked. "Sir." He nodded to the chair. "Sit, please." She did, but slowly, watching him like he might explode at any second. He studied her. "You recognize me?" "I do." "Then you know I didn't fly 300 miles for small talk." "I figured." There was a pause. "You embarrassed my son," he said flatly. She didn't flinch. "Your son embarrassed himself." A flicker of something, amusement, crossed his face. "You're not wrong." The room fell into a stunned silence. The entire restaurant was watching like it was live theater. Harrison folded his hands on the table. "I've reviewed the footage. Heard the audio. You maintained your composure, even when provoked." Amara stayed silent. "My son, unfortunately, has not yet earned the weight of the name he carries. He believes power entitles him to impunity. That's not how I built Royce Holdings." She raised an eyebrow. "And this is a PR move?" "If it were, I'd have sent lawyers and NDAs. Instead, I came in person." Amara stared at him, searching his face. "Why?" Because it's not every day someone teaches my son a lesson I couldn't. The air felt like it shifted. Guests leaned forward. Even the cooks had quietly gathered at the kitchen entrance. Harrison Royce leaned back in his chair. I came here with an offer. Amara's pulse jumped, but she said nothing. I own a luxury resort in Montecito. One of our top chefs just went on leave. We need someone who knows service, who understands pressure, who has spine. He paused. You interested in food, Miss Johnson? Amara blinked. I always have been, but I've never had the time or money for culinary school. I'm offering both. A full scholarship to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, plus paid internship at my resort, housing included. You start next week. It was so quiet in the restaurant you could hear the waves outside crashing against the cliffs. Amara stared at him, stunned. But why me? Harrison smiled, not kindly but knowingly. Because I don't invest in people who bow. I invest in people who stand. Carl dropped his tray. A fork clattered on a plate across the room. Elena let out an audible gasp near the kitchen door. Amara looked down at her worn apron, her chipped nail polish, the old burned scar on her wrist from a summer job 6 years ago. Why would your son be okay with this? She asked carefully. He's not. Harrison shrugged. And that's the point. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. One message. From her brother. Sis, you're on the news. People are calling you a hero. She exhaled slowly and looked Harrison Royce in the eye. I'll do it, but not for you. Not for your son. For myself. His smile widened slightly. That's exactly the answer I wanted. Outside, the helicopter blades spun back to life, roaring like a machine from another world. As Amara stood from the table, a few customers clapped. Tentative at first, then louder. She didn't bow. She didn't wave. She just walked, past the noise, past the whispers, past the weight of expectation. The next chapter of her life was already waiting. And it had just landed by helicopter. The ocean outside the resort was a deeper blue, clean, endless, and far too perfect to be real. But everything about Royce Montecito felt curated. From the rose petal-scented lobby to the champagne served during orientation, this wasn't hospitality. This was royalty with room service. And Amara Johnson had never felt more like a stranger in her own skin. She stood in the staff dormitory lounge, flipping through the resort's onboarding packet. It was thick. Glossy pages, strict dress codes, and etiquette charts longer than medical textbooks. Every staff member was required to smile. Every movement was scripted. Even their socks had a regulation. I feel like I need a passport just to work here, she muttered. Across from her, Lucia, a pastry apprentice from Brazil, laughed. You think this is bad? Wait until they make you iron your napkins twice. Despite her nerves, Amara was adjusting. Barely. The chefs respected her hustle. The front desk already loved her calm under pressure. And the guests, they tipped her like she'd invented the concept of professionalism. Still, one shadow loomed tall. Landon Royce. She hadn't seen him yet, but everyone talked about him. He's staying in the top suite for a while, whispered one valet. Apparently his dad wants him immersed in operations. More like supervised, chuckled another. He nearly torched the Dubai opening last year. Amara tried to ignore it. She didn't come here to tiptoe around a man-child. She came to build, to prove she belonged in rooms like this, not just serving food, but one day designing the menus they worshipped. Still, the silence between them was too loud. She knew eventually they'd have to meet again. She just didn't expect it to happen while holding a flaming tray. It was her 4th day. She was working a rooftop wedding reception. Private, lavish, tense. The bride was crying over lilies. The groom's father had demanded only heritage beef. A wine bottle had already shattered across a waiter's shoes. In the chaos, Amara carried a silver tray with steak flambé past the candlelit guests. Then she heard it, a laugh. Low. Arrogant. Familiar. Landon. He was leaning against the bar, whiskey in hand, chatting with 2 influencers in pastel dresses. His gaze wandered, then stopped. Right on her. Their eyes locked. For a second, Amara nearly stumbled. The tray trembled. He didn't smirk. He didn't sneer. He just stared, like he couldn't decide if she was real or just an uncomfortable memory. She kept walking. But as she passed, She heard him mutter under his breath to one of the girls, "You believe my father hired her after that stunt?" Loud enough for her to hear. She placed the tray on the table without reacting, but her fists clenched as she stepped back toward the kitchen. Later that evening, she found herself restocking utensils in the staff hallway when his voice came from behind. "You know, some people would have been grateful." She turned. Landon stood there, still wearing the same smug expression from that day at the restaurant. Only this time, there was something else, something less steady beneath it. "Grateful for what?" she asked. "For the opportunity. For the fact that my father didn't sue you into dust." "You think this internship is a favor?" she asked coolly. "I earned this." "You didn't." Landon's jaw clenched. "You embarrassed me in front of half of LA. You embarrassed yourself, Landon. All I did was tell you the truth." Silence stretched between them. Finally, he shrugged. "Well, enjoy your time here. Just don't get too comfortable. Places like this aren't built for girls like you." Amara's spine stiffened. She stepped closer. "You're right," she said. "They weren't. But I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to take up space." And then she walked away. That night, alone in her dorm room, she stared at the photo taped above her desk, her and her brother Jordan at his high school graduation. She remembered what Harrison Royce had said. "I don't invest in people who bow. I invest in people who stand." She whispered to the photo, "I stood, and I'll keep standing." But as she laid down, she knew Landon wasn't finished. And neither was she. 3 weeks had passed. Amara's reputation at Royce Montecito had grown fast, not just as that waitress, but as someone guests requested by name. Elegant, sharp, unshakable. She'd become a quiet legend among staff. Meanwhile, whispers followed Landon like a shadow he couldn't outrun. He was no longer just a spoiled billionaire. He was the guy who got kicked out by a waitress and got replaced by her in his father's trust. And it was eating him alive. It all came to a head one morning when Amara received a formal envelope slipped under her dorm room door. Gold-trimmed, sealed with the Royce crest. Inside, an invitation. Private breakfast meeting, rooftop garden, 8:30 a.m. Attire, business casual. Host, Harrison Royce. She arrived on time, breath steady, wearing the only blazer she owned. The rooftop was empty except for one long table, a silver pot of French press coffee, and Harrison Royce, already seated with a folder in front of him. "Miss Johnson," he greeted. "Please." She took the seat across from him, cautious. "Am I being reassigned?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "You're being offered something. Something bigger than this internship." She stayed silent, letting him speak. "I've been watching," he said. "Your numbers, feedback reports, kitchen assessments. You're outperforming staff with 3 times your experience." Amara blinked. "I just do my job." "No," he said. "You own your position. That's rare." He opened the folder and slid a paper toward her. It was a contract. A proposal. Royce Holdings Culinary Sponsorship Agreement. Recipient, Amara Johnson. Coverage. Full tuition, Le Cordon Bleu, Paris. Plus 18-month paid chef rotation across 3 resorts. Annual salary, $110,000, post-certification. Her hands trembled as she read it. "This is," she whispered. "This changes everything." "It's real," Harrison said. "No strings attached." "Except one." She looked up sharply. "What kind of string?" Harrison folded his hands. "I want you to mentor someone during your rotation. Teach them about pressure, about humility, about earning your spot." She didn't have to ask who. "Your son." He nodded once. Amara leaned back, arms crossed. "Why me?" "Because he listens to power, and right now you have it." She frowned. "That's not mentorship. That's discipline." He didn't disagree. "Call it what you want," Harrison said. "But he needs to see that strength doesn't wear a Rolex. It wears an apron. And it doesn't shout, it shows up." Amara stared at the contract again. Her dream was right there. Stamped. Signed. Offered. She thought of every 3 a.m. shift, every burned palm, every time she was told to smile more. She thought of her mother's empty kitchen, of Jordan eating cereal while studying biology flashcards because she sent every dollar she made to him. Then she thought of Landon. "I'll sign it," she said slowly, "but on 2 conditions. Harrison raised a brow. I'm listening. 1. He doesn't get special treatment. No assistant. No passes. If he messes up, I say so. Agreed? 2. I don't follow his timeline. He follows mine. Harrison gave a rare, proud smile. Miss Johnson, you just made my day. That afternoon, the official announcement was posted in the resort staff bulletin. Effective immediately, Amara Johnson has been promoted to senior culinary apprentice. She will begin advanced mentorship rotations in preparation for formal sponsorship. She will also oversee junior intern, Landon Royce, effective this week. Later that day, Amara walked into the kitchen wearing a white chef's coat with her name stitched across the chest. Landon was already there, in a black trainee apron. He looked up, jaw tight. She held out a schedule. You report to me at 6 a.m. Knife skills. Then prep duty. Then back of house plating. No phones. No exits without clearance. He scoffed. Is this a joke? She leaned in, lowering her voice, just enough. You wanted me fired. I got promoted. You tried to humiliate me. Now I sign your time card. She smiled politely. This isn't revenge. This is education. And with that, she turned and walked out, leaving Landon speechless, holding a clipboard with her name at the top. That night, she called Jordan. Guess who's officially heading to culinary school? She said, barely able to contain the joy in her voice. You? Are you serious? Paris, baby. Did you finally cuss out a billionaire or something? She laughed. Not this time. I just stood my ground. The scent of truffle butter and slow-roasted lamb filled the air. Jazz hummed low beneath the buzz of evening chatter. The grand opening of Maison Amara was in full swing, and every table was full. The small French-American fusion restaurant, nestled in a brownstone corner of Brooklyn, had a 6-month wait list and rave reviews before the doors even opened. And at its heart, commanding the kitchen like a general in white linen, stood Chef Amara Johnson. No apron, no name tag, just pride. It had been 3 years since she first set foot on the rooftop of Royce Montecito with nothing but an iron will and a burned-out soul. Now, she had her own team, her own recipes, her own future, and she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building. In the back corner of the dining room, a familiar figure sat at a reserve table, watching the kitchen window with a crooked smile. Harrison Royce, still sharp, still powerful, but tonight, just a guest. He raised his glass of wine when she glanced over, and beside him sat another figure, clean-cut, focused, wearing a modest suit. No jewelry, no ego, just presence. Landon Royce. It hadn't been easy for him. He burned out during the first month of mentorship, quit twice, came back both times. But Amara didn't coddle him. She let him fall, let him serve, let him earn every scratch, every bruise, every shift spent chopping onions in silence. And over time, he changed. He stopped performing, started listening, started showing up, not as a Royce, but as a man finally trying to deserve his own name. After dinner, Amara stepped out from the kitchen to thank a few patrons. Her team beamed behind her. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned in. Someone asked, "Chef, what's your secret ingredient?" She smiled. "Resilience." Another voice called, "Is it true you once kicked out a billionaire at your old job?" Laughter rippled through the room. Amara looked toward Harrison and Landon, then back at the guests. "I didn't kick out a billionaire," she said. "I kicked out disrespect, and I made room for myself." Later that night, as the restaurant emptied, Landon approached the kitchen pass window, hands tucked in his pockets. "You were right," he said quietly. Amara looked up from plating a dessert. "About what?" "That places like this weren't built for people like you." He paused. "They were built because of people like you." She didn't respond, just nodded once, then handed him a small plate. "Go bus table 7. Last customer spilled espresso." Landon smirked, grabbed the cloth, and went. The doors closed at midnight. Amara stepped outside, standing under the soft glow of the neon sign that bore her name. A breeze lifted her braids as she took in the sight, her staff cleaning up, her food warming hearts, her story still unfolding. Speech balloon to anyone who's ever been told to sit down, stay quiet, or know your place, stand anyway. Flex biceps, you never know who's watching, what doors are waiting, or what helicopter is landing next. Globe showing Europe, Africa, your voice, your worth, and your dream are bigger than their fear. Loudspeakers, so speak up. Take up space. Be undeniable. Because dignity doesn't just open doors. It builds empires.